Ready? Everybody ready? Okay, I'd like to call the July ZBA meeting order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Richard Brooks,
Here.
Matt Kaiser,
Here.
David Hawk,
Here.
Brad Fredette,
Present.
Anthony Jones.
Here.
I don't need to appoint anyone. Everyone's a full member, correct? Correct. Okay. So first order of business is approval of the minutes of the June 10th, 2026 meeting. What's the wish of the board?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to approve as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Hawk. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, raise your right hand. Go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
I'm just going to abstain.
So 4-0 passes. Old business. Any old business come before the board?
No old
Ms.
business.
Crosby?
Nope.
Any old business from board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Andover Seafoods LLC is seeking a variance from Table 4A5 to allow a retail space on a property located at 21 Interstate Drive, the Industrial District Map 58, Lot 6C, ZBA Case 03-2026. The board received some information this afternoon via email, but it wasn't presented to board members until tonight, so therefore I'm going to take a 10-minute recess and allow the board members to read that information. Any problems with board members? Okay, so we're in a 10-minute recess. We're going to, back from the recess. First order of business, we open the public hearing. Hereby open the public hearing. Ms. Crosby.
Yep. So the applicant seeking to establish a seafood retail space within an existing vacant building. The retail space would occupy about 750 square feet of a 6,370 square foot building. The lot itself is 1.7 acres with about 210 feet of frontage along Interstate Drive. Retail use is not a permitted use in the industrial district where this property is located. And the site itself has had a few uses in the past. Based off the information provided by the applicant, it is vacant at this time, but it had one time been a truck repair facility, received a variance for relief from the side and rear yard setback requirements to subdivide on existing 4.52 acre lot into 2 lots, and then went forward with that subdivision. The applicant has addressed the 5 criteria and submitted the additional information that the board received and reviewed to address the 5 criteria more, so the board can take action and review the case.
Any questions for Ms. Crosby at this time? And now the applicant please come forward. Oh, you're right. Sorry. I didn't have my mic on.
Oh, no problem.
Is that mic on? Is the green light on?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Thank you.
So state who you are and how your application meets the 5 criteria.
Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. My name is James Scully. I'm counsel for the applicant. I have Nirav with me as part of Andover Seafoods LLC. I'd like to begin by offering an apology. I was retained after the application was submitted, so after reading Nirav's 5 criteria, they were actually quite well drafted, but I did make some additions to those 5 criteria, which I submitted earlier today. So it's my sincere apologies that you didn't get them before tonight. That was all my mistake. So Andover Seafoods LLC, what they're essentially looking to do, and I know you just spent some time diligently reading over these materials, they're a seafood processing plant. They currently have 19 employees located at Interstate Drive. This is a large parcel of land, and what they're looking to do, I would characterize it almost as a very, very limited retail operation. They process seafood, so what they're looking to do is essentially be able to allow the public to come in and purchase refrigerated or frozen seafood, and that's it. So there will be no food processing, there'll be nothing. It's literally refrigerators and some freezers to allow people to come into this small 750 square foot space and purchase some of those products that they create. So that's essentially what we're looking to do. In my opinion, it's a very limited retail operation while it is prohibited in the industrial zone. So with that, if it may please the board, I can go through the 5 criteria. I know that you just read them yourselves, so I'll try to be brief as I can. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. We know here that the court has stated that it's the health, safety, and welfare standard, which I imagine you hear month after month after month. So again, to be brief as I can, This seafood retail sales operation is consistent with the existing commercial character of Interstate Drive corridor and will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The property is already developed for business purposes, is served by the existing road access and utilities, and is situated in an area where commercial activity is expected and appropriate. The requested relief will not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. This operation can be conducted within the existing site. And again, you all have this here, but it's going to be a 750 square foot. So we don't imagine this will alter the essential character of the neighborhood or affect the public health, safety, or welfare in this instant. Number two, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed, knowing that the court interprets kind of criteria 1 and criteria 2 together. Because the proposed use remains consistent with the ordinance's general zoning objectives, orderly development, compatible land use, protection of neighboring properties, and avoidance of conditions that would harm the public safety or welfare. Much like I said in criteria 1, we imagine that this small limited retail spaces will absorb the spirit and intent of the ordinance. Granting the variance would do substantial justice, because the benefit to Andover Seafoods LLC and the property owner from allowing a reasonable limited commercial use of the property is substantial, while the public would gain no meaningful countervailing benefit from strict denial. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished. As we stated, this building has been vacant for 30 years, and so the intent here, doing a very limited frozen and refrigerated seafood business, we feel would have no diminution of value to surrounding properties. Number 5, which is the hardship criteria, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Number 1 is the special conditions of that property. This property is unique such that it consists of 21, 23, and 25 Industrial Drive. This portion, which is a small portion, has been vacant for some time, and it's begging for a limited use here. And we feel as though there's a seafood processing plant behind this property. There's no real reasonable use other than to sell these refrigerated and frozen goods. They really have no other use for this portion of the property. Strict application of the ordinance to prohibit the proposed retail operation would prevent a reasonable, compatible, and productive use of the property despite the property's commercial setting and existing development pattern. These conditions distinguish this property from the properties where retail activity would be inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood or would require new development inconsistent with the district's character. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance and its specific application to this property, to 21 Interstate Drive, because prohibiting this limited retail use at this location would not meaningfully advance the ordinance's objectives. The proposed use would not alter the essential character of the area, threaten the public health, safety, or welfare, overburden public services, or create land use conflicts with neighboring properties. The public purpose of zoning are served by preventing incompatible uses and adverse impacts, not by barring a reasonable commercial use here that on an already developed commercial property. As applied, this property and this proposed operation, strict enforcement would impose a burden on the applicant without a corresponding public benefit. The proposed use is reasonable. The proposed retail seafood operation, such that it's just refrigerated and frozen seafood, is a commercial use for an existing proposed business property in a commercial industrial corridor. The use can be conducted within the existing property framework and in compliance with the applicable municipal and state requirements. It is compatible with the surrounding development, will make productive use of this space that has been decades of vacancy, and will provide a full retail operation with improved visibility, access for customers, without creating impacts materially different from ordinary commercial activity in the area. For these reasons, we hope that you would agree that the 5 criteria are met in this instance. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, the way the process works is we'll have you step away from the podium, and then we'll let any abutters who want to speak either for or against speak, and then we'll
Fantastic.
call you up and ask you some questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any abutters that like to come forward and speak on the issue, on the variance? Going once, going twice, come on back. All right, questions for the applicant? Mr. Brooks?
So the majority of your operations happen in the large building behind. There's actually 3 vacant buildings, 21, 23, and 25, that make up this front portion, and you're only using one of those 3. Is that correct?
So we're only using number 23, which is in the back. So front 25 and 21 are vacant as of right now.
Okay. It's just when I'm looking at it, there's like a 2-bay garage on the left-hand side. You'd be the center building, and there's another building to the right that sits a little further back. Those 2 aren't being used, but they're kind of connected. Is that?
It is, yes.
And then your primary operations is further back in the larger building.
Correct, the large building in the rear of the lot is where all of the operations happen. And then he's just proposing, I think on the sort of site plan printout that you have, it's that, there's a pen mark that marks that building. So it would just be that 750 square foot space.
And I seem to remember rescue welding or something being there maybe, but again, it was years ago. I mean, that's been vacant for a long time, so obviously nobody's come forward with any other potential uses of these buildings in the meantime.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's it for
So
me.
if I could, Carolyn, okay, so the building in the back, what building's number is that?
23.
That's 23. You call it 23 because that's the address, or are these all one lot, or they're separate lots, correct?
Two separate lots.
So what's on each of the lots?
So, from my understanding, 23 is a lot by itself, and 22 and 25 are on one parcel.
One parcel. And so 22 is 22 and
He means 21.
21?
Sorry, 21.
Okay, that's why I just thinking. So 21 and 20,
5 are a separate parcel, 23 is a separate parcel. Dana,
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe that's correct.
yeah, we're trying to get that, okay. Now, and one, so right now, both 21 and 25 are vacant, as we pointed
Confirmed.
out. Okay. Do you happen to know approximately the square footage of the back build, the 23?
Your current operations.
23, roughly 15,000.
Roughly 15,000 square feet? Okay. Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Ms. Jones?
So this would be the only use on the property, right? Because the other building's vacant, and then your manufacturing facility is in the lot behind it.
That's correct.
And I guess just kind of to narrow down on some of the criteria here, how is this proposal different from if anyone else on the street wanted to open up a retail space, like Favorite Foods or Saunders Fruit? Like, what's stopping them from opening up a grocer if we grant your variance tonight? Like, how is your proposal different from what they have?
Sure, absolutely. So to address that, first, and I'll start with saying nothing you don't know. But, every variance is a case-by-case basis based upon what the applicant puts forward. And part of the reason that I say that is because this is such a limited function. Whereas there's no active kitchen, there's no hood, there's no disposal of grease, there's no, really no waste. What this is essentially benefiting the parcel behind it because it's a seafood production facility, allowing people, rather than having them to take that product, move it to a store, and then sell it. This is a one-way stop for someone to come and benefit from those products. So really, I would imagine it's somewhat significantly different than some other proposed retail uses because it's a auxiliary use of what the property is currently being used for in an industrial zone.
Okay, but if I'm like a fruit retailer, and I'm only pushing out on this just to try and find
Understand
guardrails
completely.
here. If I'm a fruit retailer, right, and I wanted to open up a stand in front of my store, isn't that the same thing you're doing, except my fruit doesn't require refrigeration?
Yes, and I would argue that would also be a limited retail use, and frankly, in an industrial zone, I think that's a great use for something that's doing that because it's a very limited retail use to support an auxiliary use to support what the industrial use is doing, right? And so it's promoting business and allowing that product to be sold both from the manufacturer as a fresh product. But I would argue that would be the same application or very similar.
And don't let me put words in your mouth, so stop me if I get too
No,
far.
that's fine.
But, so your argument would be that while this zone prohibits retail and specifically wholesale retail uses, this is so limited and adjacent to a similar use that it should be allowed
Yes.
by variance.
Yes, I think in certain circumstances in an industrial zone when there's very limited retail as an auxiliary use benefiting that industry, that should be a permitted use,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
I want to note for the record, wholesale trade is a permitted use in the industrial district, but it is not for direct to retail to customers. Wholesale is defined as the selling of goods or merchandise to retailers, industries, businesses, institutions, or other wholesalers. So where this use is selling direct to customers, we consider it a retail use, and therefore that's why they're here. Just
Got it.
for clarification on those uses.
No, thank you very much. I was just reading from table 4A5 where it's retail and wholesale together, but I understand the two different definitions.
We
Yeah.
separate out wholesale
Thank you very
trade
much
as
for the
well.
clarification.
I get a clarification on
Go
that.
ahead, Ms. Brooks.
So if another retailer wanted to purchase stuff from this sort of business, they could come there and purchase it. They just can't have the consumer coming purchase it.
Yeah, so where they're setting up a store to have for direct to customers rather than dealing in that, which is likely part of the business model. I would expect that they process the seafood and then sell to their distribute, or someone could pick it up, depends on their business model.
A lot of these industries would truck it out themselves
Yeah.
or hire a trucking company to do this, but if one of those
Was local.
wholesalers wanted to come in and purchase it on site and take it with them, that would be allowed.
Sure, yeah, it's part of the wholesale process, yes.
Other questions for the applicant? So the previous, you recently purchased this, if I understand?
That is correct, yes.
So previously, they did retail sales out of the building in the back, 23, correct? Okay. That's an existing, currently was existing when you purchased it?
It is.
Okay. And so I'm just doing rough numbers here, so, because one of the things that we talked about was auxiliary use auxiliary use, accessory use, and we'll get the right term. So you're, to ensure if in fact the board does approve it, to look at it. So right now, we're talking about 750 square feet,
Yes, sir.
which is approximately 5% of the total, if you take into account the 15,000, which is on a separate lot, but that. So does the 750, is that a good number? 750 square
Yeah,
feet?
That's exactly what it is.
That's the whole building. Like, the actual use will be much less than that, but that's the square feet of the building right now.
Okay. All right, so that would, if the board were to approve, 750 would meet your needs, or your desires. Yeah, okay, just trying to understand that, okay. What other questions do they have? All right, and you own both lots, correct? Okay. And so the business you're in, what would you, seafood processing, seafood, what do they, I mean, what is that?
Wholesale and processing.
Wholesale and processing, okay. So, and I would say, I'm just thinking out loud here and going along with Mr. Jones was saying, similar to maybe fruits, seafood processing is different than, let's say, someone who was building furniture, which the end use is different. I'm just thinking out loud how it works, okay. Now, your storefront, no, I'm good, sorry, I don't wanna, it's not germane. I don't wanna. All right. Further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, further comments from the applicant?
No, we appreciate your time, and I'd like to offer my apology for the late submission as well.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much. With that, I will close the public hearing. First order of business will be regional impact. I don't see if there's any regional impact. Does anyone see any regional impact? If none, the chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Brooks.
I move that the variance request for Andover Seafoods LLC does not have potential for regional impact.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hawk. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, which is it does not have regional impact, raise your right hand. Passes 5-0. No regional impact. Discussion on the variance and the 5 criteria. Mr. Fredette?
Just go through the 5 criteria.
Sure.
Don't see how granting the variance would be contrary to the public interest. Spirit of the ordinance, I'm going to pause on that one. It would do substantial justice. The property owner would be satisfied, and a 750 square foot retail operation would give the people the opportunity, the ones that have been purchasing from this operation already, to continue doing so, maybe allow for a little bit of growth. Don't see anything on criteria 3. Criteria 4, don't really see how it's going to impact surrounding property values. Their locations are pretty large, lots are pretty large. I don't think 750 square feet is going to bring hundreds of cars in or change anything substantially. And 5, unnecessary hardship. So I'm going to say, for me, I'm a little bit hung up on the hardship criteria, criteria 5, based especially on some of Mr. Jones's comments. And The spirit of the ordinance appears to be to keep retail out of industrial zones. By granting this variance, we are allowing retail in an industrial zone.
Mr. Hawk?
So my interpretation of criteria 5, I think, goes back to the auxiliary use. This is a very minimal retail use. It's pretty clearly defined in my mind as a small operation. It's pretty well bounded in the sense that 750 square feet is limiting. So my interpretation is that this provides no unnecessary hardship and meets the criteria for the fifth criteria of a variance. Did I word that well?
I'm just trying to understand. So the criteria is that that there's a special condition of the property that unnecessarily causes hardship.
Right. So my interpretation of the hardship criteria is that it's an existing industrial operation, and it makes sense from a business perspective to provide auxiliary sale direct to customer, not wholesale solely, because of the proximity of the two lots and the operation for production and the availability of a facility that could be used for direct to consumer sale. The variance requested is for direct to customer retail. That's not currently permitted in the zone. And I feel because of the small size of the space and the highly defined nature of this request, this variance, that it is not imposing an undue hardship. Am I wording that right?
It's your words, your choice. I can't tell you.
I'm still acquainting myself with the 5 criteria.
Yep, understand.
It does not, granting this variance would be worthwhile by the 5th criteria. I'll word it that way.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit just to add some extra context. I think that's kind of the only angle to look at the hardship in terms of what the applicant is seeking. We have to find that it's so minimal, so auxiliary, that it's not a traditional retail use that would normally be prohibited by the ordinance, because the table says pretty definitively that it's prohibited. However, the purpose of the zone, which I'll read now, the district is provided for manufacturing and similar uses which do not generally include over-the-counter retail sales of goods or services as a significant portion of the business. That doesn't really sound like a prohibition to me. So we have to then decide, is this auxiliary enough and minuscule enough that we overlook that this is a prohibited use otherwise in the zone?
Yeah, I would agree. I read the same. Mr. Brooks?
Obviously, when a business starts out, they pick a location, they hope to grow, and this business has been here for many years. Now they're looking to grow a little bit. Having this neighboring parcel with a building that's been vacant for a number of years and such a small portion of it, it seems like a natural expansion of this business. So, you know, what else are they going to do? They're going to close up shop, go somewhere else to get a bigger building that fits their needs? You know, I think that businesses are continually having to adapt, and this is where zoning sometimes becomes a problem, is they're so restrictive that we only want processing of an industrial nature, whether it's building, just packaging of stuff. I mean, industrial covers a lot of different things. They already can sell to a wholesaler. So if they're shipping this stuff over to Market Basket, let's say, even if Market Basket wanted to come and pick it up, they can do that. But if me as a consumer wants to go do that, I can't do that. It's a pretty fine line. So again, I think it's a natural expansion, a natural use of it. I almost see the zoning as a hardship in a way because of this. But again, the saying generally isn't completely prohibiting it either.
Yeah, I kind of looked at it that the processing of seafood was kind of a unique processing. It's different than making furniture. Whereas I'm sure you've all been to a seafood retail seafood. Typically, it's a bare bones operation. It's there's water on the floor, there's things around it. Though they're going to sell frozen, it's just typically not you know, it's not a hardware store, shall we say. It's very different than a hardware store. So I think there is some uniqueness in the fact of doing food processing. I think if the board does choose, another item is and I usually say that the boundaries of zones are clear, but I mean, the CI district is right adjacent to it. I think it's almost the next lot, pretty close to the next lot, which allows retail sales. So it's really not going to change the character of the neighborhood since the CI district is the next lot. Ms. Crosby, did you happen to find any information on how the previous owner was allowed sales?
I do not have a full history, and I don't think I've recently researched that property. So no, I'm not sure how that acquired or if it just kind of naturally popped up.
Okay, but in your research for this variance, nothing came to light?
Nope.
Nothing came to light,
Nope,
right?
not related to this property, no.
The property. Mr. Fredette?
And I would add the caveat or add the input and maybe put it in the variance that we offer. I mean, theoretically, this is all product that is going to be, from my understanding of the testimony, produced on site. They're not, to your point about a hardware store, they're not bringing in goods produced somewhere else to resell. This is a small fraction of what they're producing on site, and they're offering it for sale on site.
I want to note it's not technically on site.
Right, it's an adjacent lot, correct?
Yes, it's an abutting, their industrial seafood processing plant is on a separate lot.
You're correct. Sorry.
So
It's in the neighborhood.
I think when we do, if in fact the board chooses to approve this, I think this is one of the ones where we're going to have some conditions on the approval. If we did, for example, that the two lots have to somehow be together, that if the lots are sold, then therefore you can't do retail on this front lot. The two lots would need to be together, I would think, to have that, to continue with that. We could consider that. I think we should probably look at the size, this, you know, limit to 750 square feet. Is it an auxiliary use, accessory use? What's the right term?
Accessory use is defined as a subordinate incidental use or structure located on a lot occupied by the principal use or structure. So this would still be the principal, this is the principal use ultimately for this property, for
This lot.
because,
I gotcha. But if it was on the same lot, it would be you could consider it accessory use.
yes.
Is that the right term versus, that's the right?
We don't, retail is not listed as an accessory use in the table,
Right.
but it would, you could make the presumption that the wholesale industrial use is the more prominent
Right.
principal
So is
use
there a
of
better word than
it.
accessory?
I don't have one at the moment. I haven't thought about it.
Auxiliary, sub-use, that wouldn't have any legal,
Limited,
limited?
could be a limited use that you're not looking for it to be for a retail use to occupy the entire property if you're looking to limit the retail space to 750 square feet.
Right, okay. Just things that we consider to make it, it's okay in an industrial if you're, you know, it's basically part of the manufacturing process, it's, you know, seafood or whatever it's done, whether it's on site or on the adjacent site, I don't know, and somehow tie it in that it's to the back building so that if they decided to separate the two buildings, you couldn't turn the front one into a retail while the back one is the seafood processing plant. Let me know if you come up with any issues. Further discussion.
I'll take that one. Fiddling with words here. I agree that I think at least one of the conditions imposed should be that this lot, while used for retail, must include or directly abut a lot that produces the wholesale good. That's my attempt at repeating your statement that the lot should somehow be paired. I think that retail use should be limited, might be a second criteria that we discuss, but this limited use of retail must be paired with production in some respect, either on the property or directly abutting property.
Okay. Further discussion. I think we fit all the 5 criteria. You all set? Well, you had, in the original discussion, you had some reservations about the spirit of the ordinance. Spirit, right? The spirit, yes, correct? Are you all set with that?
As set as I'm going to be.
I think, I would say that the spirit in that, as been pointed out by different board members, the definition of industrial is a little vague in that it addresses retail sales. This property is adjacent to a CI district, so I don't think it changes the characteristic of the neighborhood, which is primarily where the spirit goes to, is will it change the characteristic of the neighborhood?
I would agree.
So. Further discussion. Mr. Hawk.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss exactly what we mean by limited use and kind of attempt to reach a consensus on the limited use term. Do we all agree that this property, if permitted to serve a retail function, should be limited in that retail function in some respect?
Yeah, I would, personally, I would say yes, that it should be an auxiliary or accessory to whatever the manufacturing or industrial use is.
Right. So I think the rough wording that I might use is retail use must remain limited to a function directly adjacent to production. I'm fumbling with words. We shouldn't go into serving food. It must remain, we shouldn't go into serving products that are shipped in, produced from somewhere else. That's already been touched on. So it should be the product that is produced on the lot or the adjacent lot with minimal further processing, something to that effect.
Thoughts, Mr. Fredette?
Just have a question, I must be missing it, but where is the access to the back parcel from?
It's next to the white roofed building. It's a very small access driveway.
So it's not, so that is that therefore because Interstate Drive runs across the front, correct?
Correct, yep.
So the back parcel really has very limited frontage on Interstate Drive,
It has 30 feet.
which I would say is it does not become necessarily a circumstance for this property, but it's going to make the back property a little bit harder in the long run without the two of them together, I would say. I mean, theoretically.
Further discussion by the board. Chair will entertain a motion. Who would like to take a shot at it? Mr. Hawk, you want to take a shot at it?
I'll take a shot. All right. After review of the application, the file, and all information presented to the board, I feel that all 5 criteria have been satisfied because of the aforementioned discussion. And I move that the request of Andover Seafoods LLC for a variance from Table 4A5 to allow retail space on property located at 21 Interstate Drive, Map 58, Lot 6C, be granted with the following conditions. This lot, while used for retail, must include or directly abut a lot that produces the wholesale good, and the retail use must remain limited and solely dependent upon the production operations on the lot or the abutting lot.
Comment?
Do you want to specify the size as indicated by the applicant?
I would. Would you like to add that, Mr. Hawk?
Sure, I'll rephrase that second point. The retail use must remain limited to roughly 750 square feet.
Yep.
And solely dependent on the goods produced on the lot or the abutting lot.
Do we have a second?
Question. Do we want to say no more than 750 square feet for clarity, Ms. Crosley? So roughly, I feel like we could get lost in the weeds on that one.
Yeah, roughly has the ability to grow.
Yeah, and I think the only challenge I have with that is 750 square feet is kind of a random
Well,
value.
It's
In the
what they're
case-
asking for.
Use less.
Shall not exceed 750 square feet. If in the future they grow and they want more than 750 square feet, and if the zoning ordinance has not changed, they can come back and ask for more.
Okay, considering that, then I'll remove the word roughly and say 750 square feet or less.
And Mr.
I'll
Brooks?
second that.
Yeah, so we have a motion and we have a second. So the motion is to approve with a condition that it's basically a sub-use of either that lot or the lot behind, lot adjacent to it, and that'd be limited to 750 square feet. Any discussion on the motion? Sounds like we hashed it out pretty much. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, which is to approve the variance with those conditions, raise your right hand. Granted 5-0, the variance is granted. All righty.
Just give us one moment. We need to set up for the next application.
One moment.
And so the applicant has a presentation, and so I think we're gonna have them stand over here, just because, or you can use the traveling mic, whatever works better, or the if Jake wants to move the screen, then whoever's speaking can stand at the podium, however it works best for the applicant.
This is on.
They have a group.
That microphone. Yes.
No, I said a group. Multiple.
Scroll. Is it push like? Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
You know when you're all set, Anna.
You still doing the chief thing?
All right. All right, so item 3 Bravo, Argos Development Company LLC is seeking a variance from table 5A1, note 3 and 5 to allow 171 residential units on a lot without the required lot size on a property located at 404 High Street in a residential commercial RC district, map 37, lot 7, ZBA case 5/2026, public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Ms. Crosley.
All right, so the applicant seeking to construct 171 residential units comprised of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units on a 7.3 acre lot, which is a 321,472.8 square foot lot. Of the 171 units, the applicant is proposing that 17 of those units would be workforce housing rental units for 20 years. Based on the proposed bedroom count provided on the architectural plans, sheet A103, the required lot size for 171 units would be 726,450 square foot, which is a 16.68 acre lot. We've provided a breakdown of how we came to that determination for you in the table. So this property being located in the residential commercial district, a recent RSA that was passed by the state, put into effect as of July 1, 2026, indicates that notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, municipalities shall allow multifamily residential development on commercially zoned land, provided that adequate infrastructure, including roads, water, and sewage systems, shall be available or provided to support the development. So pursuant to that law being into effect, the special exception is no longer applicable, and the multifamily use in the RC is permitted by right, but they are seeking a density variance tonight, and so they are still here before you to seek that relief to allow for the additional units. The RC regulates residential uses based off of Note 5 in Table 5A1. Note 5 saying that we develop the lots based off of the intensity of the residential development. Where there is more than 3 units being proposed, we go to then Note 3 for residential multifamily, which Note 3 controls the lot size, and Note 3 says for multifamily dwellings of greater than 3 units, the minimum lot area required increases by the following amounts for each additional unit over the first 3, and it is based off of bedrooms. So that's why the architectural plan that they've provided, we do the bedroom count. So we base it off of what they gave us for that. This property has historically operated as a religious use. We have no historic zoning or site plan applications. They have gone for conceptual and design reviews with the planning board. Those are non-binding reviews. So this is still the next step for them. And they have addressed the 5 criteria so the board can take action into the public hearing.
So Ms. Crosley, in the planning department's preparation for this, did they find any, so far, has there been any identification of any issues such that the infrastructure of the city cannot support this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Its complete review has not been done, right, or has?
We haven't gone through a complete site plan review. The applicant has provided a site plan, which is in your packet, and they've done traffic studies, but it hasn't gone through any sort of our third-party reviews, our full planning board reviews. It's just been conceptual and design review, which allows for the planning board to give kind of feedback to the applicant as they prepare their applications. But it is non-binding ultimately. Between those applications were non-binding. So the board is here to determine the variance for the density of the property, for residential density.
Yep. Okay. Mr. Fredette, followed by Mr. Brooks.
Do you know how many bedrooms would fit on this lot under current density?
I could
Well, it's a
do,
multi-
yeah, there's a lot. You could, unfortunately, the way that we regulate density for the R3, it makes it very variable. You can mix it
Basically,
up.
depends on how many bedrooms per each
Yeah.
unit. If there was all 2 bedrooms, it'd be different than if it was all 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, you could do less, you would have less units if you're doing larger larger units. So if they did even like a 4-bedroom, it would reduce the number of units. If you're doing studios, you could get more.
Correct. I'm just trying to get a feeling for how many units we are outside of density, that's all.
I mean, you could,
Half, probably, based on your numbers, roughly. Because you
Um,
said the lot's about 8 acres, plus or minus, and you said they'd need 17. So if they're at 171 and we take 40% of that, they're,
Let her do some math.
okay.
yeah.
Let her do some math, because she could take this, one bedroom takes 4,000 square feet, so you could take the 250 that's allowed, that's the minimum, and then add to it, whatever,
Yeah.
subtract that from that, and then you could divide that out by 4,000 and come up with some number of bedrooms.
And the way that we presented the information in that table too gives you that full calculation of, so if they did 73 2-bedroom units, the lot size needs to be 365,000 square feet. If they did just 39 1-bedrooms, it's 156,000.
Now, this is what they proposed, correct? In their
So those
proposal.
are based off of their proposal of bedroom counts for the units.
Okay.
So 2 bedrooms would take 365 as a rough number.
Okay.
Mr. Brooks?
So with this recent change at the state level, making this by right, do they offer any kind of regulation, or do they still leave that to the city or town to do that?
We can regulate if there's incompatible uses or if we don't have infrastructure such as, so this property is serviced by city water and city sewer. Sorry, David, I don't mean to exclude you. The property is serviced by city water and city sewer. It is on a city-owned and maintained road, and it is not abutting, it's not in a zone where industrial uses are. So where we have zones that allow for industrial uses, we can still regulate multifamily at this time, or residential at this time,
How would we regulate?
that it's not a permitted by right because it's not compatible with allowing for next to industrial uses.
Okay.
And secondly, didn't we also have a change at the city level on this corridor as well? Or is that
Not yet.
pending? But it's in the works, I believe.
There are draft ordinances and work with Stratford Regional Planning to propose zoning amendments, yes.
Good enough. Thank you.
Back to Mr. Fredette.
With the RSA, though, we are still, the city, not we, the city is still allowed to regulate density, and that's why they're here for a variance, correct?
Yes.
Because this is not an adaptive reuse, because it's a completely new use. They
would-
have to meet our density requirements, so
They-
they don't get it necessarily by right unless they were meeting our density requirements.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Crosley at this time? Obviously, you can ask later. All right, will the applicant please come forward? Present.
Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Jake Wagner. My colleagues and I are here tonight representing Argos Development Group, located at 100 Conifer Hill Drive in Danvers, Mass. We are here to request, as you heard, a variance for density. I'm going to have Pat Panciocco of Panciocco Law come up and go over the 5 criteria. Pat?
What was your name again?
Jake Wagner.
No.
Oh, Pat Panciocco.
I'm Pat Panciocco.
You know how to spell that?
Okay. So, Ms. Crosley summarized a lot of the information, but we're still going to give you a little overview because this is a pretty big project. There's been a lot of work done on this project and a lot of time and thought invested into the plans. So I'm here, I represent Argos Development. Argos is presently,
Speak in front of the mic.
is that good?
That's good.
Okay. Argos is presently under contract to purchase 404 High Street, map 37, lot 7. It is currently owned by the Roman Catholic Church. In November of 2025, Argos presented a fairly well-developed conceptual plan and some architectural renderings to the planning board for conceptual review to obtain some feedback. I was there that night, and I have to tell you, I'd be understating to say that it was very, very well received. Because what this project proposes is a 4-story mixed-use building where you've got the commercial facing High Street, which is the main road, and you've got the apartments behind the retail space and on the upper floors. Now, up here on the board, you have the first page of the proposed site plan. The team, after the conceptual plan, went to work then and began to refine the site plan and the architectural plans in anticipation of going back to the planning board with a more refined concept that you see up here now in design review. And that was when the planning department prepared their staff memo on the density. I thought it might be helpful because we've got a limit. I pared down the pages. The pages in the site plan are usually pretty long, but I thought it might be helpful for the board to have Mr. Dubé, who drafted these plans, at least talk about the plans and the infrastructure that is available here, because that's part of the analysis to be satisfied under House Bill 641, which has now become the law. I actually attached the statutes, the 674, 79, and 674, 80, to the application so that you would have those because they are fairly new. And if you don't mind, I'd like to spend a little time because I think it might help for the board to have a better understanding of what we're proposing. Carl, do you want to take them through your plans?
Can I use this?
Yes, you can.
Okay, my name is Carl Dubé. I'm president of the Dubé Group. We're in Londonderry. We're land surveyors, civil engineers, planners, landscape architects. So the site was fully surveyed, and we would proceed with any final survey and utilities and that type of thing as we move along, hopefully with a positive outcome from the board. We also proceeded with coordinating with various town departments on a conceptual basis with their input from all the different departments and everything, and that was very well received. So the property is about, it's a great piece of property actually, and you know it's on High Street. There's a center left turn lane there, great traffic. We also have our traffic engineer here too if you need to ask him any questions. But the site, so we actually went probably further than we would normally need to with a conceptual plan, that type of thing. So we went all the way. We went full landscape plans and details, full site layout plans, grading and drainage, utilities. One thing that we wanted to make sure of is when the ZBA is contemplating looking at the density requirements of the city versus what the state would allow, or even the property itself would support, is, as the chair mentioned, is where are we with infrastructure? Where are we with checking off the boxes of everything else? So a lot of times what we do with a project is we say, all right, well, what are the applicable buffers and the setbacks? What is the ratio of impervious and all that? What are the landscape requirements? We actually have lighting plans and details also. We really wanted to do some homework on this site to prove that. I didn't believe it at first either. You know, working backwards on this, what would be the density that the site could support and meet all your other regulations? And try not even to have to ask for any waivers even at the planning board level, and I'm sure there'd be a few. So we really well thought everything, the traffic, the circulation on the site, you know, there's no dead ends or anything. Everything is screened. We have Class A buffer yards and zones in the back. We're very, very particular to the back because there were houses back there. There might be some people here for that. We drew up sections to scale from every home to our property. We actually designed the site so that, you know, there's not a long building along the back, like this long wall. We wanted to make sure that there was all these variegations and interest in the building so it wouldn't feel so big or anything like that. We have courtyards in the rear, which are quiet courtyards. We have a courtyard in the front, which is more exciting and, you know, lively in the front, all pedestrian scale. So the commercial spaces in the front of the building are very nicely appointed. One could be set up as a bistro type restaurant, another maybe a spa, that type of thing. And then we have the apartments. We also have our architect here, so he can talk a little bit about the building and the massing and the scale and the use and how people are going to live here and interact. And you know, we think that we spent a lot of time on this. We've actually pre-designed in future interconnections with our neighbors in the front for the commercial. So there's a commercial building off to the left. It's commercial, pretty much commercial across the street. There's utility corridors off to the right with trails that we could interconnect as well. There's a Walmart back there, an auto parts store, and tree buffers all through here and around the back. So we wanted to make sure that at that density, you know, we're offering, for example, 1.5, it's actually more than that, 1.5 spaces per unit, which is very good. It's right in the middle of, you know, most other cities and towns, what they require for a unit of mixed bedrooms, this type of thing. So even that, you know, very, very generous sidewalks everywhere, sidewalks, walkways, interconnects to High Street. Everything that the town staff asked us to do, we did. They had a lot of great ideas, and we implemented and delivered this into the plan. So a lot of times the city would see, you know, an applicant go in and they're jamming stuff in, you know, they're like, they need like multiple variances. They would have to go to planning board and you know, a big pile of waivers, and it's just a big mess. Or very, very dense, very steep, you know, very stressful plan layouts and that type of thing. In this case, it's just not that at all. It actually works super, super well. And we're very, very sensitive to the rear buffers. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have, you know, we have berms back there, and we have, you know, fencing and extra supplementary landscaping. We wanted to make sure there wasn't a driveway going around the back or any of that. We wanted to keep it quiet. We also did some earlier on some alternative layouts for commercial, and what could this be on retail, commercial. You know, we could do a supermarket, we could do retail, you know, loading zones out back with trucks backing up and everything else. We probably still need a Class A buffer zone. If the building heights weren't that great, we'd probably allow it to be less. But the alternative of retail, heavy retail here, and what we're providing here is astoundingly different. We're very sensitive to putting this design together to prove all of that. I think most board members would say, well, you know, we're landing at the density. Let's just talk about density. But what about all the other items? You know, and we can talk about master plan and everything else. And we believe this project meets the master plan very well. So I'm not sure if there's slides on that, but we did submit,
I have 3 plans, Kyle.
okay, that's fine.
That's it.
There might have been the master planning of the site and the zone all the way down to the end, maybe. I'm not sure how this was.
I didn't include all
Oh, there we
of
go.
them,
Okay.
but some of them.
Go back up to the first one. No, the first one. Yeah. So just to kind of get a context, a lot of times with boards, they're going to ask us, well, where are we in the city? Where's the location with the context and what's going around us and what's the zone? And so key aspect and takeaways of that is, we are in the RC zone. It's allowed by right and everything with the state laws and all that now. And the R3 zone multifamily would be allowed also technically prior to the state law. So there's this bubble, there's this tan bubble that is sort of like right in the city center, very densely packed. And then we have this pink zone here, the RC zone, and we're on that high street, and we're located right in the middle of that. So that's sort of where we are in the city. We're not like right in the middle of the city and a lot of stuff going around on that. But as we move forward through the next slide, okay, this is one slide that a lot of people are asking, well, if someone wants to recreate, if they live here, what are they going to do? Besides using some of the common space in the building with, common community rooms and art and things like that is, this site is very easily accessible to the active open space, which is Millennium Park, and also the city open space, this big piece over here. And we're centrally located to all that, and we're actually very close to the Willand Pond recreation area as well. So it's a really great location for recreation and all of that. And I'm not sure what other slide we might have here. One thing in the master plan, they're talking about the aspects. The site enjoys robust roadway corridor location. So one thing is, sometimes we don't want to be putting an apartment complex like in the back corner someplace where we've got to drive through all sorts of other things to get there. We want to be really on the right corridor for easy access in and out, and we are on that actually with the main service road here, located equally, balanced between the city center and also, Dover and the abutting towns and really access to the highway, which is great. So there's another slide here that we might have put in. We're on the bus transit node stop. There's actually 2 bus stops already here, right in front of the church and right across the street. We've invited the bus company to come in, and we actually pre-designed our site for a bus stop, and they could so choose to move those from the high street sidewalks into our site. We have nice curb appeal and plazas and seating areas outside for that if they want to, if they choose to bring their in. Also, some of the really key criteria for an apartment building is, we do a lot of these on septic and wells and everything else too, but it's hard to do that. You need a lot of land. Here we do enjoy the municipal sewer and water, and this is sort of the green area is in the city primarily what we have for both sewer and water. What's serviced by sewer and water? What sites are served by that? And so you can check that box off. I think that might have gone into some other aspects. But even when you look at the master plan, you look at the city's self-audit on housing, all the things that if you rifle through the master plan and the goals, I think we might have submitted something to you for that as well. There's a whole bunch of green check marks right down the line. You guys had a bullet point, and we probably met, and we don't have to be doing this. It's just sometimes someone will say, well, do you meet the master plan? Are you getting there? And the answer is a big yes. I mean, right down the line, we're checking off those boxes. So we really tried to design this specifically to the site and specifically to the city's needs. So that's about it. And if you want to probably have some conversation from the architect.
Yep, I want to have Mark show them the building. The building is really nice.
Good evening. Mark Yanowitz. I'm principal of LYF Architects. We're based in Haverhill, Mass. Do a lot of work, a lot of multifamily in New Hampshire. Background as well, I have a carpentry, builder background. I've done some development myself. I've been a general contractor, or I was a general contractor for over 30 years. stopped building myself in 2019 before COVID, but I kind of know the challenges of doing multifamily scale, and if I've done a lot of smaller buildings, single family, fourplexes, 6, 8, 20. Once you get above 20, you start typically getting into a larger scale project, and you get into more commercial construction. And I don't know
Not
what.
sure what I did here, but I don't think you did anything. You did it on its own. Okay. You weren't touching.
Okay.
Technical difficulties, but you weren't touching.
But since we're waiting, the building was, as Carl mentioned, thoughtfully designed with feedback from the planning board, very well received. We call it kind of a modern New England vernacular. This is a 21st century building in the sense that it's a low energy building. And I will point out that the Argos development, they're going to do a couple commercial spaces, but they're going to hold on to this property. This is not a fix and flip or build and flip it. They're holding on to a rental property, and we're doing a low energy building. And partly that's because of the energy code today, but partly because they're going to hold on to it. It's going to be low maintenance, and that takes some investment. And what I found as with my development background as well is when you jump up from small scale multifamily, if we try to bring 171 units into town with 8 plexes or 20 plexes, we're going to be needing a lot more land. And you're dealing with a residential scale development. Once you get up into the numbers we're talking about, this is commercial construction, so it's automatically more expensive per square foot. And we're getting into increased structural systems. The type of subcontractors you're using have to be larger scale. They're more expensive contractors. So part of the conversation about density is the numbers have to work. Yes, in theory, we could take a floor off this building, but the numbers don't work for a developer because the cost of construction is that much more. The top floor is probably the least expensive floor to make. This can be wood frame on the upper floors, but we still have to do all of the other commercial construction elements to it. So it gets into, very much a pro forma numbers game to, if this building was half the size, like we talk about on a scale, what's allowable, we would not be in front of you. The numbers just don't work.
Can you show us the photographs that we just had up, Mark? Are they actual, I know they're not.
These are go back to
Are those a fair representation of how this building will look from the road?
Of how?
How the building will look if I'm standing in High Street?
Yes, this bottom right image is the High Street main elevation, the commercial courtyard that, as Carl mentioned, is more active. Mm-hmm. You see the upper kind of shows that from a bird's eye view, mm-hmm. If you are floating in space. But you get, it would be very welcoming to visitors going to the commercial spaces. We did, slope the roofs to give some character and balconies. There's courtyards, as Carl mentioned, on both sides of the building, and the scale certainly is broken up by the H shape, the letter H shape of the floor plan. I will say that there's generous side setbacks and rear setback, so that the scale, still works on the pedestrian level, but certainly with the abutting properties.
What do you have on the next slide, Jake?
Our full slide, this is what we prepared before, so this is a different computer, so
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you get some axonometrics, just some character. As shown, it's a 4-story building, commercial on the front High Street side, and then residential starting at the first floor on the other sides and going up.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Just to give you a quick overview, we had our traffic engineer go out and look at High Street and make some, measurements, and he did do a traffic study. So I'm going to have him, it was attached to the variance application, but he can probably tell the story in a nutshell, and then I can get into the facts, okay?
Okay.
Nope, that's quite all right.
I don't have any pretty pictures, unfortunately.
That's okay. No, your report's attached.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael White. I'm an associate transportation designer with Howard Stein Hudson. We're a transportation engineering firm out of Boston, Massachusetts. We have offices all over Massachusetts. We're doing more and more work up here in New Hampshire, Maine, kind of all over New England. So I will give a very high-level overview of the traffic analysis that we did. Because we are generating less than 100 peak hour trips, we did not do a full in-depth analysis of intersection studies. We really just looked at the existing condition of High Street and the impacts that our project will have on the volume that it sees today. So, as has already been said, it's a 172 unit residential development with about 4,200 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. There's parking on site for 270 vehicles. We had what's called an ATR, an automatic traffic recording device, placed on High Street. This was placed in February of this year. It was, yes, during the winter. It was actually, we had to delay it because of the big storms that came through in early this year. So our ATR found that in total, 20,000 vehicles are traveling on High Street in both directions. It's about a 50-50 split. 10,000 vehicles traveling northbound, 9,800 traveling southbound. The average vehicle speed on High Street is about 35 miles per hour. It's 37 in the northbound direction, 33 in the southbound direction. I feel as though both Carl and everyone has already given a very high level review of the site plan itself, so I won't get into too much detail there. I'll go into how we generated our trip estimates. So industry standard uses the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We call it ITE. They provide data that we can use to estimate, based on the number of units, based on the square foot of retail provided, how many trips are going to be generated. And that's typically resulted in person trips, which are then transferred into vehicle trips by using what's called a vehicle occupancy rate. So essentially, ITE tells us X amount of people are going to show up because of what use is on site. We then take that vehicle occupancy rate and estimate how many vehicles all of those people will be arriving in. So we use land use code 221, multifamily housing mid-rise between 3 and 10 floors. So we're at 4 floors. And then we used LUC land use code 822, which is a strip retail plaza, to look at the ground floor land use retail. In total, we're estimating approximately 996 daily trips that's spread out across 24 hours. During the peak hours, which typically occur between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 and 6 p.m., we're estimating approximately 81 trips in that morning peak period and 92 trips in that p.m. peak period. We looked at a trip distribution pattern, essentially where our vehicle is going to go to and come from when they leave and arrive to our site.
We found that the majority are going to head northbound. The majority are going to head southbound on High Street. That's approximately 85% of the total trips. The remaining 15 are likely to go northbound on High Street and then spread out from there. In our report, we have a little bit more definition on that distribution pattern. I don't want to dive into it without a map in front of everyone. We also looked at the number of parking spaces on site. So again, we are proposing 270 parking spaces. We did a parking demand analysis, which essentially, again, ITE provides data that says residential housing uses this much parking, retail establishments uses this much parking, and that's from all over the country. We found that during a weekday, 268, the 85th percentile, so when the most people are going to be parking there, 268 vehicles will be parked on site, will likely be parked on site. And on a Saturday, it's a little higher than what we're allowing or what we're providing at 273. However, again, this is an average and we don't anticipate being over that number. We also took a look at the site distance at each driveway on High Street. There are various measures that we have to meet, federal, state, town, city, all sorts of things. We found that at the north driveway, there's more than 600 feet of sight distance in either direction. That means a driver stopped at the stop bar trying to exit the driveway can look left or right and see 600 feet in either direction. It's similar at the south driveway, although limited looking to the left because of existing vegetation and the curve in High Street, exactly. However, those numbers still exceed all of the regulations, both state, federal, and city. So in general, we are producing a limited number of vehicle trips during the peak hour. Again, High Street sees over 20,000 vehicles a day. We're adding approximately 1,000 in that whole day, less than 100 in those peak hours. I'm happy to answer any additional questions, but that was the high-level overview.
Okay. So hopefully you've got a little better idea of what we're proposing here now. So when we first began working on this project, I think Ms. Crosley mentioned the ordinance required a special exception. And that became not necessary, I guess we would say, once the House bill went into effect in 674, 79, 80 became the law on July 1st. Now, under 674-80, Roman 1, it says, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, municipalities shall allow multifamily residential development on commercial zoned land, as is the case here, provided that adequate infrastructure, including roads, water, and sewer, are available or provided to support the development. So all the information that we just provided you about the site, about the sewer, the water, the traffic, the condition of the roads, the capacity of the roads, their ability to handle the traffic that this proposal would create, were all directed towards demonstrating that we meet that criteria. Specifically, as Carl mentioned, the property is located in the RC district, where commercial uses are permitted and multifamily is permitted with the appropriate infrastructure. The roads, we have 671 feet of frontage on High Street, which is also known as New Hampshire Route 9. It is a public highway maintained by the city. The road is adequate, and to carry the traffic, the site distance exceeds the amounts required. The traffic report states High Street is a 5-lane public highway in most locations, 2 lanes running to the north, 2 to the south. There are 2 driveways. They will be improved and placed under stop control. There is also concrete sidewalks shown on the proposed site plan that will connect to the sidewalks that run along the edge of High Street. The traffic, as Mike just explained, is marginal for when you compare it to a retail or a commercial use. In fact, if you look closely at the traffic study, 10% of the, it's only increasing the traffic flow along High Street by 10% if this variance were granted. In addition to that, as to the retail space that is proposed on the first floor, that alone generates 22% of the traffic that is generated by this site, which shows that the retail commercial use generates a higher level of traffic if this property was redeveloped as commercial or retail. Municipal water and sewer has been confirmed. There has been nothing mentioned anywhere that the capacity of the sewer system and water system is not sufficient to accommodate the proposed use. In fact, the sewer hookups alone here will generate about $450,000 for the city. So based upon the adequacy of the infrastructure, we are pretty confident that we meet the criteria to qualify under 674-80:1. So with that, I wanted to just go over a few things in the master plan with you. To your credit, they're very young and very recent. The data in there is a lot, and there's a lot to be said. I tried to narrow that down also. They were very well written, very informative. The housing chapter in particular was adopted on April 17th of 2024. It acknowledges the city has a missing middle in the housing world, and it expressly states that the zoning ordinance affects the city's ability to create new affordable units. One resident was actually quoted, and she said, "The city needs housing, period. The city has the water and sewer capacity, a centrally located fire station, and uncrowded schools. The city could increase the tax base significantly with minimal increase in government spending," well, of course, thanks to the abundance of resources, because there are a lot of resources here. When addressing the cost of housing, though, the concerns started to mount. The purchase price of a single-family dwelling rose by 21% between 2010 and 2019. More than half of the city's housing predates 1970, with 28% predating 1940. Now, what that means for entry-level buyers, as you know, is lots of repair and maintenance if you can afford one of the older homes, and if you're lucky, you won't run into having to remove asbestos or lead paint. Because older homes tend to have those challenges, and they often require a higher level of maintenance. And the city's population has gone up 13%, although the number of families with children has declined by at least 5%. In 2022, though, the rental vacancy rate was 1.1%, which is extremely low. It must be very hard to find somewhere to live here. The median rent for a 2-bedroom unit was $1,505 in 2022. Stratford Regional Housing Needs Assessment reported the city needs 748 new additional units by 2040. 2040. And 493 ownership, 255 rental. Units in Rochester and Dover, abutting towns, are 2,023 and 2,077. But recall, housing and the lack of it is a regional concern. Because people, if they can afford somewhere to live in the next municipality, they will relocate. So as much as Somersworth, they have their share, it's even greater in the other towns, because that burden gets shifted beyond its boundaries. The housing chapter confirms that 64% of the city's land is zoned residential. 77% of its housing stock is single family or duplex. Only 7% is multifamily. And the citations to the pages are in the overview that I provided. When Stratford Regional Planning Commission was assessing the city's ability to fill the housing needs of the residents, it estimated your full build-out will be complete in 2031. That's 4 years from now. That's really right around the corner. But it also noted that the city had limited undeveloped land where municipal water and sewer are available. And that would prevent, likely, the creation of the units that you need by 2040. They said that, they explained that none of the available land that's available to be developed is located along major transportation corridors or in the downtown area where there's water and sewer. And density restrictions imposed by zoning on vacant land without municipal services does hamper the city's ability to meet the residents' needs. That's at page 14 through 17 of your housing chapter. Notably, the housing chapter goals include allowing multifamily and commercial, and industrial for that matter. And the residents who responded to the surveys encourage the municipality to encourage greater housing diversity and density along the transportation corridors. The land use chapter answers some of the questions why, though, as does Table 5A1. The land use chapter was adopted on November 20th of 2024, very recent. The city has 5,891 acres of land. 49.2% is developed. When the constrained land, like wetlands and conservation land, is reduced, now we're down to 32% of the city's total undeveloped land. In the end, this is this up here is a diagram found in the housing chapter. As you can see over on the right, the orange circles are the multifamily housing, and I think that's where your multifamily zoning district is. But if you look, they're all kind of clustered in that area. Now, if you can go down further, Jake, there's a couple of charts in here. Yes, that.
You gotta pick up the mic. You gotta pick up the portable mic.
This one. Okay. This one shows the total number of lots that are developed as residential multifamily are 358. There are 0 undeveloped lots available for multifamily, 0 buildable lots, and 0% of all the lots available allow multifamily. Down below, it talks about the zoning district. Residential multifamily, 76.73 acres is residential multifamily. and that is the same as built. There is 0 buildable and 0% available. And likewise, even down in the RC district, 114.36 acres are available, are built upon, are zoned in the residential commercial and developed. Land acres buildable 2.21, but 0 permits multifamily. Can you go to the next one? No, down, back. There was one just before that, I think. This one here talks about the needs for housing in the adjacent towns. Is that the only chart that was in there? I think there was one other one. Is that it? That's the zoning. All right, let's leave this up. This is Table 5A1. If you look at the R1 zone, you see residential single family permitted. When you have water and sewer, you can approve a new lot with water and sewer with 15,000 square feet. With water and no sewer, it's 25. Without water and sewer, you need a full acre. That's significant to keep in mind. If you go down to residential duplex, under R2, you have the same matrix. Only in the residential duplex, the lot has to be only twice as large to do a duplex, where in the residential, when you have no municipal utilities, you have to have 3 times the area of land because you have a septic system. Now you go to R3. R3, you have no multifamily unless you have water and sewer. So in other words, multifamily is prohibited unless you have it. That's important here. That, coupled with the fact that there is no land zoned to permit multifamily, is telling, and may explain why there is such a limited number of multifamily housing projects or apartments or units available to residents for housing. This is not unusual. This problem, and it is a problem because this is what they call exclusionary. Because based upon the density calculations that are applied that connect density for multifamily to bedroom count, it's flawed. And the reason for that is there's no mathematical relationship between the number of bedrooms and a municipal utility's volumetric capacity to manage storage. You connect to storage, you can have 20 bedrooms and you're paying a connection, but more importantly, the city's getting paid per bedroom. That's fine if they want to charge that way for the sewer hookup fee. But because of the way this zoning is written, and because there is nowhere right now to build new multifamily, that is probably why the Planning Commission is concerned that you wouldn't be able to fulfill the needs of the residents, and perhaps why only 7% of the land has multifamily housing. But this is common in many southern New Hampshire municipalities. These types of restrictive ordinances that are developed to exclude multifamily housing in the past because people were worried about filling up the schools with children, which we seem to have kind of gotten over, they were adopted in many communities, and there are some still that try to take it to the next level, but they have become illegal under Britain v. Chester. But more importantly, there's no nexus between bedroom count when you have municipal water and sewer. And to impose that, you're imposing it on land that has municipal water and sewer right there in front. You cannot not connect because there's a state statute that requires you must connect to municipal water and sewer if you're within 100 feet. The land with those utilities is far more costly than land that you have to install a well and a septic system. So when Mark mentions spreading the cost of the land over more units, there is a mathematical rationale underlying that. And it is an issue in the way density is being calculated here. The other thing that I noticed also, single-family duplex, nobody counts bedrooms. You hook up at the sewer commission, and you have to do that, and they can charge you per bedroom, but somebody could put 6 bedrooms in a single-family home. There's no restrictions on that, but yet there's restrictions on bedrooms and certain land sizes required when you add bedrooms to a multifamily unit. That's flawed also. All land has to be treated equally. And I bring these issues up to you not to cause trouble, but this is why we feel so strongly about this relief being appropriate. If the roadways and the sewer capacity was inadequate, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but they are adequate, and they will adequately serve 171 units. And the size of this land is not something we can increase, nor should we have to. This land is more valuable because those services are available. We don't need to add acreage to accommodate septic flow in accordance with the DES rules. In fact, I actually went through the sewer ordinance, and they actually reference the septic system gallonages is how it's right in the ordinance. To estimate the number of bedroom equivalents a commercial user may be assessed, the sewer ordinance states it relies on the New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules, Table 1000-1, unit design flow figures. That's for everything. That may be fine for them to assess fees, and that may be valid, but it's not valid in zoning. So it's important to bring this out, and I wanted to bring this out separately because it's the treatment of multifamily housing by the ordinance itself and the restrictions it's imposing are exclusionary, and I can't think of another word to describe them. They discourage higher density housing, something that your master plan and your land use plans, in the brand new ones, 2024, promote. People want it. People want mixed use. If you read those reports, they are pretty telling. So with that, if the board would like me to go through the criteria, I'm happy to do that. We assume you'll have lots of questions. You may need more information, and we would also invite you to let us know what those are. So So,
Pat, before you close out, I want to make one other point that wasn't addressed due to the computer issue for 1 second. Our initial intent for this land was actually a use by right. We were actually intending to do a commercial use here, which would need no variance. We came to the town, our city, discussed it with you initially, and realized this was not the best use for anyone for this property. The best use would be to come in and help the housing crisis and make something that the city can be proud of while servicing the people in the city. And that alone, if you bring, and we can bring Mike back up regarding the traffic. If we did the commercial use, the traffic volumes would have been staggering compared to the multifamily use. And again, I believe it was a use by right coming in to do another 50 to 75,000 square feet of commercial use instead of something of this nature, which at the end of the day, we didn't see benefiting anyone. Thank you.
so I'm looking for some direction from you, Mr. Chairman, whatever you would like me to do.
No, typically applicants briefly cover what's in the 5 criteria. Gives you
Okay.
a chance to expound upon any that you so wish. Do not have to read it word for word. You just,
Okay, I'll try to be
I
brief.
would not want to deprive you of the chance to do that.
Okay, I'll do my best. Okay, so the applicant is requesting a variance from the dimensional and density regulations in Table 5A1, as explained in footnotes 3 and 5, to redevelop the subject property as a mixed-use multifamily building with 4,150 square feet of ground floor retail space facing High Street and 171 rental units. As required by the Workforce Housing Statute, I'm providing you notice in this application, and it's in there anyway, that my client has offered to restrict 10% of these units as workforce housing rentals for 20 years. Granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, because as represented by the the housing needs assessment done by regional planning, Somersworth needs additional 740 housing units by 2040. Statements in the master plan confirm residents want and need those units. And while we understand, and I'm sure the board knows, the master plan is not a binding document. It is the residents' wish list. And the planning board is supposed to take it and amend the ordinance, as they can to make it happen. And I know that takes time. For the variance to be contrary to the public interest, though, it must unduly, in a marked degree, conflict with the basic objectives of the ordinance, or alter the essential character of the area, and that's the Chester Rod and Gun Club case. The zoning ordinance describes the RC as a transitional zone. And here, it would be transitional. As we saw earlier, the RC runs like a little snake down on either side of High Street. It's highly unusual. And this is a great transition because it is a mix of commercial and residential use. The applicant has proposed mixed use. The units will not alter the essential character of the area. Residential units will be to the rear and on the upper floors with the retail space in the front. It will bridge the commercial uses fronting on High Street with the residential neighborhood located to the rear. Now, on the second slide on there, Jake, there was they did talk about, it was in Carl's plan, the second one in. It does show some of the surrounding uses. But as you probably know better than I do, oh, it's too big. Second one more back, I think. Oh. There it is. So over to the right, that's the big Walmart. And you also have public service there on the right. Let's see what else we've got. To the rear, we do have a residential neighborhood. The buffer to the rear that is there today will remain intact, and there will be additional landscaping done in the back to enhance that. The Bernice Street is across the street.
Bernier's actually. It's actually Bernier.
Bernier, I'm
Bernier.
sorry. Oh, I had another project with that, sorry. And it provides access to several single-family homes. And there are other single-family homes along High Street. But most of it is commercial. You've got 2 commercial service credit union buildings diagonally across the street. We've got Target, Home Depot. And while they're not abutting, they are definitely not something you miss when you drive down the road. You also have the power easement, and Carl mentioned that. That encumbers the setback area on the right side of this parcel. So this is a mix, and the transitional purpose of the RC district will be honored by this proposed use. Granting the variance for the density will also not impact the surrounding residential properties because the additional units do not increase the size of the footprint. And all the vehicles and foot traffic will come out to High Street. There's no exit going into the residential areas at all. Allowing the proposal to move forward does not conflict with the basic zoning objectives and provides an attractive transition with housing that's in a walkable location, close to amenities, service, public transportation, and employment opportunities. The variance is not contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Granting the variance, and I'm paraphrasing here, will serve the general purpose of the RC and the public purpose served by density restrictions based upon the number of bedrooms to ensure adequate space for septic systems is irrelevant as to this particular location due to the municipal services that are available and has no rational nexus to public health or welfare, in addition to being suspect. Multifamily use is permitted in the RC as of July 1st, and we do have all the services required to make that happen. I've already explained to you that the bedroom count is in the sewer ordinance, and I won't belabor that again. Unless you'd like me to get you copies, I'd be happy to do that. While it may be true that more bedrooms means more water used, more water flows through the municipal sewer lines. It doesn't go into the ground. And the city assesses the developer $1,800 for every bedroom, in addition to paying more for land that has water and sewer available. How do you limit density based on a number of bedrooms there? There's just no connection. To be found substantially just, the potential loss to the individual must be outweighed by the public gain. Granting this application is a win for the applicant, but it would also be a win for the city. This creates an opportunity where a new multifamily can be built when there is no land in Somersworth where multifamily is a permitted use. It also will create a tax base and satisfy the needs of the residents who were kind enough to participate in writing the chapters in the master plan. Surrounding property values will not be diminished. There is no evidence that a new $56 million building, and that's the estimated cost, with commercial retail on the first floor will diminish property values in an area that's a mix of residential and commercial. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from the others in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship due to the strict application of your density restrictions. I think I've explained why applying the the additional land requirement for each bedroom, which is basically when you read all those provisions in 5A1 together, states that is not a meaningful measurement to assess an appropriate density for this particular property, because there is no nexus. Furthermore, the applicant has no way to cure that shortfall in the land. For the number of units that he's proposing, he would need approximately, I think, 16 acres, which is just a little more than twice. But quite frankly, he has the water and sewer, and he can go up. As Carl explained, the setbacks here from the side and front lot lines are greater than they require. And the property cannot be made any larger. There is no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of it to this property. That's the bedroom and the additional land. So limiting the number of units based upon the number of bedrooms for septic systems is not rationally related to this property at all with water and sewer available. The use is reasonable because it is permitted and it's in great need right now. So I paraphrased to not talk so much, but if you have questions, feel free to ask me, or we have a full court press here tonight that's available to answer questions also.
Right, so I just saw our process will be that we'll have you move aside, let the butters and people who want to provide comment either for or against, and then we'll bring you back up and we'll ask some questions. Any butter or property owner that would like to speak? Don't all jump at once. State your name and address and then your comment.
James Manhart. I'm located at 8 Cinnamon Ridge Road. I'd be considered an indirect abutter. I'm across the road, so the direct impact is minimal for me. I first learned of the project through the Fosters in November, and I did attend the planning board presentation they did on Wednesday, March 18th, and I indicated to the planning board just some general considerations, because I've been very happy with both the planning board and the zoning board. You will recall Cinnamon Ridge was also involved in a project that is still going on, the 19 apartments at the intersection of Stackpole Road and High Street. And we have yet to see the impact, but I do believe the boards did their due diligence and worked with the developer, and I like seeing that. The things I indicated at that time, and I see Argus has in their variance literature, which I read down in the development office this afternoon. One of the things I questioned very early was 4-story structure in that area. How is that going to fit in with all the other things? And I was happy when at the planning board meeting, there was somebody that did indicate when we talked about the height of that building, are you talking the top of the 4th story, or are you talking the top of the steeple type things that are in there? And I think it's only to the top of the 4th floor was the answer. So I still look at that. I question, how does it fit in with the ambience around there? I do understand, and I'm not a native Somerworthian, but I came here in 1998, and I've paid taxes, my property taxes, faithfully since then. But so the tie, I think the steeples and the architect are to honor the historical fact that this was St. Martin's, or
Holy Trinity.
the Catholic Church's property. And I do believe the statue that's there, the shrine, is going to still stay, which would honor that past unless that has been changed. But in terms of fitting in with the ambience around there, we've mentioned Target, Walmart, Home Depot. All of those don't have steeples, you know. So it was really the size of the building is going to affect the direct abutters behind it when the sun sets earlier behind that building. So that was one of my concerns, was just how tall was this building going to be. Another was the traffic concerns, which I know is part of the planning board, and I know you take notes. It goes back to the planning board to do the traffic studies. But the traffic study was done on February 3rd and 4th, and I questioned then too, is that an adequate study in the middle of the winter as to the traffic on High Street compared to, say, July or September when school starts, etc. I am happy that they have been meeting with some of the abutters. There was a direct abutter here at the planning board meeting in March, and I know they were talked to about any concerns they had. And there is another abutter here that recently joined our neighborhood, and if they talk to them, I think that's good dialogue as to what's going to be in their backyard. I do want to mention, because in both presentations they've talked about these trails in the back, and maybe because I just attended the Riverwalk Trail Committee meeting before this meeting, the trails in the back there and connecting with Millennial, I think it's incorrect, or my knowledge is Somersworth does not own that property back there. That's under federal control. So, and the hiking trails that are there, there's big boards across it now that at least they don't want ATVs back there. So, yeah, I'm all in favor of the hiking trail if it actually existed, but I think that might be an error that you could ever walk from, say, the back of Walmart and end up over in Millennial Park. And some of it, I don't know how the stuff they did at Sunningdale to the beavers were causing some problems with flooding there as to how, if that's been mitigated. All of those are things that, as you do your due diligence as the zoning board and as the planning board also, as long as the things are at least looked at, I'm happy. Biggest one is the traffic, you know. How much is it going to go there? I know the planning board, there was someone on there that had said too, do we need 2 entrances and exits to High Street, or would one be sufficient that parallels or meets the intersection, the street across High Street from it? Because if you go up High Street, you will notice as you come from Walmart, the trees are blocking your view on the right in the PSNH right-of-way. And so as you come around there, having to watch for cars trying to get out of that area may be a concern. And I know that's more the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'd like to come up next?
Good evening, Chairman. I have a quick question. I'm not a direct abutter or indirect, so is it still appropriate for me to speak tonight? Okay.
Interested party.
My name is Shane Conlon. I live at 2 Cinnamon Ridge Road here in Somersworth. Wasn't planning on coming tonight, so I wrote a letter, but I'm here, so I'm just going to read it to you guys tonight. I'm writing as a resident of Somersworth regarding the required variance to permit approximately 171 dwelling units at 404 High Street. First, I want to acknowledge that I understand the need for additional housing and appreciate the investment this project represents. My comments are not intended to oppose development, but rather express concern about the extraordinary magnitude of this variance being requested. Under the current zoning ordinance, the property would permit approximately 70 dwelling units. This applicant is requesting approval for 171, more than double the density otherwise allowed. In my opinion, this is not a modest deviation from the ordinance, but a significant departure from the development intensity that the zoning regulations contemplate for this property. While the application discusses municipal water and sewer availability, state housing policy, and project economics, I respectfully ask the board to carefully consider whether the applicant has demonstrated why 171 units, rather than a substantially smaller number, is the appropriate level of relief. One question that stood out to me in review of the application, it does not meaningfully evaluate alternative densities. There appears to be little discussion of whether 100, 110, 120, or 130, or another intermediate number of units could provide a reasonable use of the property for reducing impacts of the surrounding neighborhood. If some increase in density is appropriate, I believe it is important to understand why this particular level of development is justified over other less intensive alternatives. I'm also concerned about the cumulative impacts that accompany a development of this size, particularly for neighboring residential properties, These include increased vehicle traffic, additional noise associated with a much larger residential population, potential lighting impacts from parking areas. I didn't see a photometric plan, but I have made note that they are, trying to work on the appearance of the property to residences, so I do appreciate that. Buildings and site amenities. While I understand that many design details will ultimately be reviewed during planning board approval process, the overall intensity of the development is being considered here tonight by the zoning board, and I believe those impacts deserve careful consideration. I'm also mindful that the application relies on conceptual buffering, landscaping, and compatibility with nearby homes in support of the requested variance. As someone who has seen projects evolve through subsequent approvals, I hope the board gives thoughtful consideration to whether those neighborhood protections should remain meaningful as the project proceeds through review. I'm not going to, point out specific properties, but I stood here on May 21st of last year for a special exception of another property. This board here approved the special exception requiring that, buffering and lighting and other items to be looked at. And subsequently at the planning board process, waivers were granted. So I'm just concerned that the plan here could deviate and change over time. So I hope that if there is any possibility of this board requiring that restrictions be placed on certain waivers, I'd be appreciative of that. Existing residents deserve confidence that the buffering, landscaping, and lighting protections presented as part of this application will ultimately be reflected in the development that is built. As a resident, I support thoughtful growth that respects both our need for additional housing and the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Based on the information presented, however, I am not persuaded that the applicant has demonstrated why a development of 171 units is the appropriate level of relief, or why a lesser increase in density would not achieve many of the same public benefits with fewer impacts on neighboring properties. I respectfully ask the board to carefully consider whether the requested variance strikes the appropriate balance between addressing our community's housing needs and preserving the quality of life for those who already call this neighborhood home. Thank you for your time, your service to the city, and your thoughtful consideration of this important application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
How you doing?
Good evening.
My name's Roy Teagland. My wife and I moved into 7 Cinnamon Ridge Road recently, and we were aware that this building was going to be going up. We've been a little bit nervous here about the amount of units going from 70 to 140. So we please consider the amount of screenage and lights and everything be valued to us and be respected to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up and speak for or against? Going once, going twice. The applicant, please come forward.
Yep, I'm actually going to speak over here. I just wanted to thank all the abutters for raising those concerns on their end. I know something of this size can be a little concerning, and as I would be as a neighbor. I would like to address a few of them. To the gentleman at 8 Cinnamon Ridge Road, I believe he touched base on our last planning board, and Mike, I believe we did an assessment on the traffic study over there on Cinnamon Ridge Road, if you wouldn't mind just addressing that briefly.
The study, sorry. On Stackpole Road?
Stackpole Road. I think it's very similar.
Gotcha. Yeah, so at our meeting on the 18th, one of the members of the board had mentioned that our trip distribution pattern didn't accommodate Stackpole Road. He had thought that some of the southbound traffic that we were sending along High Street would actually go northbound to Stackpole Road and then all the way around and down. We took a look at that very briefly. While we still feel the majority of our trips will go down High Street, there is definitely a possibility that Stackpole Road or Cinnamon Ridge will be used as cut-through traffic, as I'm sure it already is today. We do not anticipate a significant amount of our trips to utilize those those roadways. Again, a lot of our trips will be destined for the highways, for major roadways that connect regionally and within Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. We don't feel as though a significant portion of trips will utilize those roadways. Yep.
Next, I just wanted to also address the height. Carl, I believe we have the height to the ridge that we meet the requirement. What is it? 40? Is it 47? Or?
Yes, depending on how you measure the height, but we're at about 47 feet to the top of the top story. But most importantly,
The top story, you mean the peak, or to the top of the?
well, we could have done a flat building at 47 feet, but we chose to add more character for the peaked roof. So if you add in the peaked roof for that balance and character, you're going to about 57 feet per the ordinance as they measure it. But the buildings, and I appreciate the butters' comments as well. So we included in the packets site sections to scale to every home in the back. So we have, number one, we have Class A buffer yards on our own property that meet the regulations. Those Class A buffer yards, it consists of, wooded areas as well as infill, landscaping, berms. There's no drainage going towards the abutters at all, and fencing and all of that. The use of that area back there is quiet by design. Certainly if we had a by right commercial, we could put in a very large shopping center there. We actually provided plans for that, and the traffic counts and study for that show this tremendous increase compared to what we're showing here. But, you know, that traffic would have been, I mentioned it before, loading, docks, everything. It would have met all the criteria. And that's what the abutters would be hearing and seeing. Right now, our design was based on the whole buffer yard requirements. We started with the buffer yards, the Class A buffer yards, and then worked our design away from that. So depending on the building, between the homes and our building, 172 feet separation, 277 feet separation, 281 feet, almost 300 feet separation between a home and our own building. And in between that, we have much, much more buffer yard than is required. And then the quality of that buffer yard is substantial. And the use that we're designing back there is substantial in terms of keeping things quiet and non-intrusive. So that was given to you. I don't think we have it in the overview, but you have it in the paperwork on those buffer yards. One of the homes is close to 100 feet to the power lines that are right next door. They're going to see the power lines and the poles, which are almost 50 feet high, and all the power lines that go with that, and the gas lines that are along there too. You don't see the gas lines that are in the ground, but the power lines are there. They're much, much closer than, to one of the homes than our project is by far. Just a couple other comments related to that, and I appreciate and respect their suggestion to look at these, and that's why we did it. We indeed did this. The lighting plans are fully complete, and we submitted those. That included the photometrics. That included everything, all the details of the lighting. It's all dark sky friendly. They're all cut-off fixtures. There's no light spillage anywhere off our property at all, not even close. But all that was done, the photometric plans. So when the gentleman suggested that, absolutely, I was in my chair going, yes, we did that, absolutely. And we're not required to do that here, but I believe that this board and the gentleman that spoke demand that. I think that you should expect to see that when we're putting a plan together, even at this level. So the landscape, the same thing, the landscape and buffering, you have a full landscape plan there, with full details, everything. So I think on noise, we're much, much quieter than the alternative by right commercial retail. And I'd like to point out that many of the buildings that are retail along the strip there are very tall. They're massively tall. I should have done a measurement, but some of those buildings are, upwards of easily on the scale, in terms of the height of the buildings.
Example, what building would you refer?
I mean, you just look at a Target. You look at any of the ones that with the tall, centerpieces, the parapets on the roofs and everything are just pretty massive. I mean, we have an auto parts store next to us. There's a lot of stuff happening, and this is a good transition for the neighborhood. And the gentleman suggested that all that should be shown on the plan, and we did. Absolutely, we did that. Alternative density, we looked at that as well. We did put that retail plan together, and it generates a tremendous amount of traffic. Our two driveway curb cuts are hundreds of feet apart. There was one comment on one of our curb cuts that it should be limited to right in, right out, and we'll address that, and we'll address that with the planning board and the city staff and engineering if they want that. So really, I believe that when someone suggests that we should look at cumulative impact, we putting that on the plans in spades, that quality. So if you had a chance to look at the plans and zoom way in, we're not going to bore you with it. But you'll see this as this plan has that quality, better quality than most plans you would see in the city for landscaping. And I've studied a lot of plans that have been submitted to your city just to make sure, because we always want to be, our office wants to be better than that. So you'll see the quality of landscaping. You'll see the parking. We're not asking for any waivers on that. You guys don't see it because you don't jurisdict on waivers. But when it gets to the planning board, usually there's mounds of waivers that they have to deal with after you're done with them. Not to say that, we would promise that wouldn't be one single waiver, as a condition of an approval for the CBA, but our goal was to eliminate as much, if not all, waivers. So our parking spaces are all the full dimensions. Our aisles are full dimensions. We actually submitted also EMS, which was very well supported, the fire truck, circulation. Everything that a planning board would ask for at a very, very high level, we've already done, and we're ready to do even more if needed. But thank you.
You set?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you all for your time. I mean, I think the last.
We haven't finished our questions, so.
Oh, yep, I know, I understand. I just wanted to thank you all for your time. I know it's been a lot tonight. The last thing I wanted to address was, just the metrics here. If we could, make it work all together and have a lower unit count, we'd work with the city to do that. Unfortunately, with the development of these type of sites and mixed use and what we're planning to do rather than go commercial, this is the unit count that needs to be surrounded by, it just doesn't work at a lower level at 100 or 75 or 50. So I think we also provided you guys with the financial breakdowns, comps of rents, et cetera, to try to show you those metrics. Thank you.
All right, ma'am, if you come back up, you're the figurehead here. We'll see what kind of questions we can throw at you.
Okay, fire away. I'll do my
Just
best.
got some questions. Who wants to jump? Mr. Fredette?
All right, so first I want to touch on 67480 that you've brought up. Would your argument be, because what I guess I'm trying to clear up is, are you making the argument that 67480 allows you to do this by right, or it does not allow you to do this by right?
I did not make that argument. I said, I think what my presentation was to make sure the record reflected that there are adequate services to satisfy the statute available to the property.
Okay, so
Okay.
the services are there based on 67480. Do you think this property, based on your presentation, qualifies to be built under 67480? Because you spent a lot of time on that and read Roman numeral 1 into the record. I'm just trying to see where that fits relative to your application tonight.
I did that because initially a special exception was required, and because the statute just went into effect 9 days ago, I thought I owed you an explanation as to why the special exception wasn't required and then two, why this property satisfies the statute.
But you would make the argument that this property satisfies the statute.
Yes.
So then would you make the argument that this could be built by right if it satisfies the statute?
I would say that a multifamily is permitted. Yes.
Notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary. So I'm just trying to understand how this fits with 67480, because if the argument is that this works by right, why do we need a variance?
The variance is for the number of units, the density.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. So it seems like your argument for granting the variance under the hardship criteria is the cost of the project.
No.
What would be, so based on legal precedent, we have to find something unique about this property that sets it apart in topography, environmental features, shape, et cetera, that sets it apart different from other properties in the area that would grant a variance for density. So how is this property different from other properties in the area that we should give it a variance on density requirement for 174 units?
Okay. Property has 7.38 acres. And for the density that we're proposing, we feel that the infrastructure accommodates that level of density. But when your requirements for density are strictly applied to this property, the size of it leaves it inadequate.
But as a quasi judicial board, all we can do is apply our ordinances, correct?
You are supposed to, you are supposed to apply your ordinances, yes. We're asking for relief from the density requirement. That's all. Because there's no fair and substantial relationship between the number of bedrooms here and the purpose served by that restriction.
But what is special about this property that separates it from other properties on High Street that would allow us to say, okay, this particular property is different from the Walmart property or the Andrews Drive property or something that's already built, if it were up for sale, that we should grant an exception or a variance for density here because it is so different than other properties on the High Street corridor?
It doesn't have to be different than all the other properties. In fact, they're all quite unique. There's tiny, tiny little residential properties that have 1/10 of an acre, some of them, and there's other properties that are quite large. This property, it is unique in that it has no wetlands, it's flat, it has water and sewer. They're all positive things, though they're not defects. Those are special conditions, but its size is too small to strictly comply with your ordinance, but your ordinance doesn't have a nexus to this anyway.
If I could interject for 1 second, if you don't mind, I think it's special and unique that it's the only piece of property around here that can satisfy all the needs and meet all your checklists on the master plan.
I would say the courts in New Hampshire, I would say, have said that we are, as a zoning board, supposed to use a master plan as a guide, but not to grant. The master plan in of itself doesn't substantiate grounds to grant a variance, is my understanding.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have said master plan. I should have said that could sustain it and be able to suit 171 units.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? So let me ask you a question. So you're very heavily on the fact that the density requirements are to support septic use. So do you see any other use for the density requirements for the per bedroom? You see nothing else in that you think that supports?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Mr. Chairman.
So we obviously have a density requirement.
Yes.
And you've said that you've basically drawn a conclusion that that density requirement is only to support a septic system. How big, how many bedrooms you can have for a septic system?
That's basically what it does. And quite frankly, as I showed you on your chart, you have breakdowns with and without water or sewer or whatever, and with it, for every category of use residential except multifamily. That's discriminatory. I'm sorry, it just is. It should be applied evenly across all the uses. Then on multifamily, you control the number of bedrooms. And I understand the purpose if you don't have water and sewer, but you don't control bedrooms for any other residential use. I mean, there's just no relationship there between the number of bedrooms, other than that's how you pay your sewer fee to hook up, and density. I guess, I hope that helped.
May I add also, Mr. Chair, that there are other factors, as we all know. It's not just a septic system, because the water is the other half of that. And if we had to do, say, a public water supply system for multifamily, which would be required by NHDS, that would require probably multiple wells and really big well radii, huge well radii, and that's like tons of acreage. So, we do a lot of apartment complexes across the state on septic and well. And yes, if it was wells per PWS standards and septics, we would be looking at acreage that is substantial. The other test to that is, as Pat mentioned, this site is so good that and it's so efficient that we can even meet all of your other regulations and still support the density. That's very rare. You very rarely see that. So even in the multifamily district in the city right now, primarily it's very tight. The lots are very squishy and narrow and angular. There's a lot of topo in that area. So when you get a lot of topo, a lot of angular, just a lot of pinch points, a lot of stuff, you're going to be needing a lot more acreage to put the same number of units there to support everything. So you have some really nice regs to support multifamily. Wide sidewalks everywhere, EV charging stations, the big parking spaces, the big aisles. We don't have any retaining walls on this site. We don't have anything. As a matter of fact, on this site, our engineers kind of had an internal challenge, which we actually met, and that is the impervious area coverage on this site is the same with our design as the existing development with the church. The differential is the use of porous pavement. Because the site is so good, we can do the porous pavement. So this is sort of like a really nice site that would probably win a Plan New Hampshire award because of its innovative technology for treatment, not just porous pavement. So the groundwater depths are very deep. It's perfect for that use. So we have a porous pavement in the lower density traffic aisles for that. So our own engineers on our own site, we basically wanted to challenge ourselves to have the same amount of same amount of impervious percentage as out there right now, which is really cool. So all these things, it's actually a good thing. I know Mr. Fredette would say, you keep asking about, and rightly so, on most applications, you're saying, what's wrong with this property? Why do you need it? Why, is it steep? Is it a crappy piece of property? Is the soils really bad? Is it, the geometry? You mentioned all of those. And usually we rely on that for the unique characteristics. But in this case, under Section 5.1, it doesn't have to be that this is a crappy piece of property, so we need some relief. It could be that this is an excellent piece of property, and there's truly a disjoint in the density requirements that the city puts up that have nothing to do with anything but, I don't know. There's no nexus, no technical nexus to it or legal nexus to require that. And so instead of this property is unique and different than everything else, it's a white elephant or this or that, the challenge is, woe is us. We're not doing that. We're actually coming forth and saying, we meet all your other criteria. That in itself should tell you, and it proves all the other variables, that the number for density is capricious when it comes to comparing that against the new state laws. So I hope that, humbly, that you would see that. We did all the extra work to prove it, because I know if I was sitting on this board, I'd be asking all those questions. Have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? You got this checked? You got that checked? You got that checked? How much other stuff are you going to be asking for when you get to planning board? And I hope that we don't have to ask for hardly anything.
Okay, thank you. Question, I'm not sure who can answer, but do you know how many children will be in these apartments? Does anyone in any of the studies?
Thanks for asking that. I just had an 85 unit complex approved in another town. It had 15 2-bedroom, and it had the rest of them was studio or 1-bedroom. I think it's 0.14 children in the 1-bedrooms. In the whole 85 units, after it was fully leased, and we also did fiscal impact studies, there were between 5 and 6 children in the 85. That's it. Because the 1-bedroom units are self-limiting. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, you have 2 and 3-bedroom units, but yes.
I could give you copies of those studies if you needed them.
If you had that information.
Yes.
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, any final comments by the applicant?
I don't know if there's other information. We understand this is a lot to digest and a lot to take in. We understand this is a big project and there may be a lot to think of. And if the board needs more time or needs to kind of absorb this and we can provide additional information, please let us know. But I'm not sure what else I can say. That'd be beating a dead horse.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Sorry, I do have just one more question.
Sure.
First, I'd like to thank you for being so thorough with this. Usually we don't get as much detail as
I was.
gotten.
I tried not to talk too much.
I guess my question is, I've sat up here for a number of years and I see developers sometimes put placeholders out here and, oh, this is our idea, and then come to find out it changes. Would you say this is a pretty thorough representation of what's going to be built with all your knowledge of?
Yes. Jake?
Yes. Yes.
They're ready to go to the planning board.
We're ready to go to
as it
planning
is,
board
I
and submit
believe
these
that.
plans
Yes,
directly.
this is not testing the waters. They've already been to 2 planning board meetings,
Yeah,
and
no, I'm seeing a level of detail here that I don't always see this early.
it's almost too much. Yeah, it is a lot, and that's why I felt like I needed to acknowledge that. This is a lot for you to absorb. But I wanted to put that out there, and we have no issue with giving you more time. We understand this is a big ask, but we feel real strongly that this is an appropriate fit in this location.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? You all, you any last minute comment? You're all set? Okay, just making sure. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. First order of business is regional impact. Has anyone seen any regional impact? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Who would like to jump forward?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Huck.
I move the variance request of Argos Development Company LLC does not have potential for regional impact.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Fredette. Discussion on the motion. Motion is that it does not have regional impact. Go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
I'm just going to say that I think there is a significance to the traffic here. With them putting 2 exits and entrances to this, I think they're trying to address that. I'm no traffic expert. I don't sit on the planning board. I'm not going to sit here and discuss this too much, but I really foresee a light coming into this. When I see people pulling out, taking a left, and if most of these people are going to be going south on High Street, that's a left. It would just certainly make stuff a lot easier, but not my realm. I'm here to discuss a variance. I just want to throw that out there. I don't think that it's going to have a huge impact on the region. It just very locally, traffic getting in and out of that area, I see that being
Local traffic,
challenged.
but not necessarily at the Dover crossing.
Exactly.
Okay. Huck?
I'd like to add on to that. I think that I felt like I had to spend a lot of time looking through our 2024 planning documents related to this
Regional
because.
impact. Are we on regional impact? I just want to make sure we're going regional impact.
Oh, sorry. I'm skipping steps. Responding directly to Mr. Brooks, I don't think there's a reason for concern for large traffic. If we're looking at the numbers that were reported in the paperwork and communicated tonight, we're in the order of 80 to 90. During high traffic hours, 45 cars per hour is relatively low. And the statements about the drastic difference between residential impact on traffic versus commercial left me feeling like there was low regional impact. Maybe eventually we see a rationale to change the use of that road in front from a strode format to something else.
Any other comment on the motion that it does not have any regional impact? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand that it does not have regional impact. 5-0, it passes. Now, discussion on proposed variance and the 5 criteria. Who'd like to start? Mr. Brooks.
I know that hardship is the biggest challenge on all of these, and I kind of have to agree with the applicant. The fact that they can fit all of this into this, they're leaving a mature buffer yard, as they call it, around this, which I hope they truly do. You know, it says a lot to what this property's capable of. I also know that we're looking at a lot of changes in our zoning. There's been a lot of discussions. Even if they weren't to get this variance, I'm only one person. I don't know how it's going to go yet. I wouldn't be surprised if this was allowed by right with some of the changes that I've heard discussed in this city. I know that we certainly need more housing. There's certainly the right places to do housing, and there's the wrong places to do housing. And one of the things that the master plan talks to is walkability. Well, zoning over years has pushed industry to one area, commercial to another area, housing in another area. That doesn't make anything walkable. Having housing within the commercial area, that starts to make stuff more walkable. So I think that's how a lot of zoning is starting to look at stuff. I think we see that with the state laws that were recently passed. I think the city's done a lot to move in that direction as well. Just like everything else, it happens slowly, too slow sometimes. I think that this is the sort of projects we do need, and I'd love to talk more about the appearance of it, but that's a whole nother topic that we don't even look at. So it doesn't matter for the appearance. We're not here for that.
Okay, Mr. Fredette.
I think it is important to reflect on the fact that since some of those 2023, 2024 numbers came out for housing stock in the city, we've added or will add here probably a total of 325 units. So kudos to the progress that's been made. To point to Mr. Brooks's point, there is a place for projects like this. We need housing, and I think if we're going to hit that 700 number that we're shooting for, we're running out of ideal places to put a building of this magnitude, and ultimately we're going to need them somewhere eventually, I would argue. So I'm really hung up on how we make the fifth criteria fit this project within the confines of our responsibilities as a zoning board with the ordinances the way they are right now versus where they may be in 2 months, 3 months, 9 months, or a year from now.
Okay, Mr. Hawk.
I think in that same line of thinking, the hardship criteria can be applied to this property because of the scarcity of properties that could receive such a substantial multifamily structure. So I think that sets it apart as unique out of the entire land area of Somersworth as a whole, not just in the local abutting streets or neighboring properties. I find myself thinking of the hardship criteria as predominantly the zoning ordinance that we have on the books, and the request to reevaluate or entertain a property and structure that would support a much higher density is simply an interpretation that mismatches with the information, the zoning that we currently have in place, maybe as though it wasn't anticipated when the zoning for this region was originally put in place.
Okay. Further comments? Mr. Brooks?
Just to go through the actual criteria, the 5 criteria that we have to go through, I think it's good to touch on each one. I certainly don't believe I believe it is in the public interest. Obviously, housing is something that the whole region needs. This would create more housing. It's already allowed by right through the state for multifamily. The spirit of the ordinance, again, it's almost the same. These two go hand in hand. I don't think there's any difference there to discuss. Doing substantial justice, I think it makes good use of this property. Again, it's just the placement of it, having the walkability, the trying to incorporate stuff into mixed use, that's something that is mixed use. We're already allowing residential commercial through there. So they're even incorporating it into their own site, not just mixing in with what's there existing now. I don't believe the property values would be diminished at all with this for the fourth one. And again, back to the unnecessary hardship, I think that the applicant brings up a very good point, as this being so unique that it's, it doesn't have the steep hills to conquer that challenge. They don't have wetlands. There's just, it's almost like the perfect property to develop in this sense. And they still can allow the buffers and so many other things that we already require. And I think it'd be awesome if they went through this and didn't ask for any waivers. If they do that, great. If not, I get it. Sometimes you need them, but it's quite a challenge if you don't, and good to you if you don't. Thank you.
Okay. Discussion. Mr. Jones.
I guess I'll jump in. I am impressed at how thorough this has gotten to before it's come in front of us. And shout out to the engineer for sheet 8 on the site plan compliance notes, because being able to go through that and see how they ticked every box certainly helped me when I was reviewing to see how it fit the criteria. Also, in the design elements, the buffers in the back, which I know they have a 100-foot buffer that's required for the building, but I just see a lot of care put into how they place the building and the site, and just kind of with my design brain, I could already see ways I could have stretched this further, but they chose not to. And I think that kind of shows some care for the community that you don't always see on multifamily mixed-use developments like this. When I'm talking about the fifth criteria, I think I agree with Mr. Hawk and Mr. Brooks. This is such a perfect flat level site that could support multifamily, and it's on the edge of a primarily commercial corridor where it transitions to residential. It's kind of a perfect spot. I see the concerns about the traffic, but I mean, they submitted a traffic memo, which of course they didn't have to do, and that does definitely alleviate my concerns. 1,000 trips per day would be a 5% increase on what the road's already handling, and I'm certain that it can handle that. And if that was done in February, one of the abutters expressed that they had concerns over that the traffic counts were too low because it was done in the winter. That would only help their case, because as a percentage increase, it would be lower. So I don't see this at all as a burden to the community. I think it's in a good spot on a primary corridor with adequate utilities, not stretched to the limit, considerate of the residential uses behind it. Certainly not going to affect property values, because the commercial uses don't really care about how this property is being used, because as long as they can use their property, they're good. And the residential uses behind it, I think, are adequately screened. I would be in favor of adding conditions that the lighting and landscaping plans be kind of committed to on this, by placing that as a condition on the plan so that they can't change it or get a waiver from the landscaping from the planning board down the road, if that alleviates some of the abutters' concerns. But I'll leave that discussion to the board.
Mr. Fredette, did you have a comment?
I would agree with Mr. Jones. I would almost say with the plans as thorough as they are, I'm not that concerned, and kind of looking at the costs already to point, I think it's a reasonable place. But I would say, I would just, based on some of the past projects, as Mr. Conlon pointed out, and I don't know how we do this as a zoning board, but making sure that it stands as true to what we have approved as reasonably possible, so that we're not looking at multiple changes down the road.
Are you referring to the plan in general or specific items in the plan?
I would say the landscaping, lighting, location of the building. I just go back to Elm Street and think about how many times that Elm Street building was before us again and again and again for changes that frustrated boards and abutters in this city.
So I think what you could do is, for the landscape plan, a condition could be that the landscape plan shall not be reduced from what has been presented to you. So they could increase, because I don't see how that would, unless the board has any qualms with that, but that it shall not be reduced from what has been presented. And the lighting plan shall not be increased from what's being presented, because that would control that the minimum is that they meet what is being presented, and we can reference the plans dated to what these plans said is. And if you have other like criteria that the setbacks, if the building location is where the board feels that that is supportive to your granting a variance, you could say that the setbacks for the building shall comply with what was presented to you or
Height.
with the ordinance. 'Cause if they're-
Height, just things like that. Again, just looking back on past projects, that's all.
So the height is going to be a waiver to the planning board because the height is above what the zone allows, but the height is allowed to be waived by the planning board by increasing the setbacks. So that they will have a minimum of at least that request.
Thank you.
I get two concerns or two items I want to bring up. One is density is not just about septic system. Number of bedrooms affects how many kids you have, what infrastructure the city needs to do to support these residencies. You know, whether it be police, fire, and recreation, school. So density and number of bedroom is more than just septic system. It also changes the characteristic of the neighborhood. The density of the number of people in a development is a character of the neighborhood. How big's the neighborhood? How densely are the people populated? So there's more to density requirements than septic systems and sewer systems. So I'm struggling with how this doesn't alter the spirit of the ordinance, and the fact that though it's not built yet, it changes the potential character of the vision of the plan. Secondly, the hardship criteria, I think this board is going beyond its authority to approve this. If this is what the city wants, the ordinance needs to change. The city council, the planning board, and the city council needs to change the instructions. I don't think we have it's within our authority, to go change something this fundamental as to the density. It's even close. This is twice the size of what the city planners, when they wrote this, said it was okay. Twice. Mr. Fredette.
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on that, I think, when I questioned the applicant. And I do see your point, and I am, going back to kind of, let's call it in simple terms, an argument for separation of powers. And I think there were a lot of kind of thoughts parsed out here into which direction we were going to go. If we feel that this could be done by right, then that would be a question I would make the argument for the court, not for us. If we feel that our ordinance is discriminatory, again, I would argue question for either the courts or the city council. And to Mr. Brooks's point, the city council is moving in the right direction if we support this type of development. But I think, to your point, we need to be careful that we don't try to use a hackneyed phrase, spot zone to get this project through.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Kaiser. We have, kind of an example here from the applicant. I think they've stressed to death the, the applicability of footnote 3, which is part of their variance application on this. And it's that I don't think that the ordinance necessarily contemplates a development of this scale being used for 4,000 square feet per unit as a linear function on lot size. I mean, to require 18 acres for 171 units seems a bit arbitrary when it pretty cleanly fits on this proposal. I mean, when we talk about density restrictions and the like, we're usually concerned about overcrowding, but this proposal looks like it doesn't overcrowd anything at all. I mean, it's nicely contained on the property. It's not spilling over the edges. There's more than adequate screening. So I don't necessarily see us overstepping or really an issue granting the density use here, where I think that it's kind of a gap in the way that it's worded. It's really designed more for smaller developments. I don't think when this was written that it really contemplated something of this scale.
Okay. Mr. Brooks?
I have to agree with Mr. Jones on this. You know, when our zoning was written, we didn't have housing being built of this size, period. I just don't recall seeing it unless it was a skyscraper, and we certainly don't do skyscrapers around here. So it's just a very different time than what our zoning was done. And how well they've made it fit, again, I think it goes to the uniqueness of this property that it will support something. I also see your point with the overcrowding, the intensity. You know, yeah, we have to take our emergency services and so many other things into account. It's not just the sewer. But even at the same time, look at all the development that's not impacting our schools when you would think, oh, look at all the kids that are going to move in here. They've demonstrated similar things where you have very small numbers of children in developments like this. Even Sunningdale, when that was done, would it bring 3 students to the school, maybe 85 houses? So again, it's just a trend. Times change, and it's time some of our zoning changes. And I know the city council, mayor's housing task force, I actually sit on that as well. I see changes coming. I don't like stepping out of what our ordinance writes and offering variances freely. I often vote against them with good reason. I think this one is an exception to that.
Yeah, I appreciate how Mr. Jones framed your statement there. I have something to learn from your succinctness. I think I'm going to join the consensus and respectfully disagree with you as well, that there is a set of conditions and assumptions that go into the creation of the ordinances that we currently have to read on the books today. And I truly do not believe that they account for structures of this size, which means inherently structures of this size will require a variance. And until the other authorities in our city make movements to remove these barriers, we are the friction point that will decide whether structures or properties that result in structures of this size being implemented. Every single one will have to go before us until the planning board makes a decision to reduce that friction, increase the efficiency of the process, and take a more unified approach to align our zoning with the housing plan and the intent that we have before us to read today. So I agree with Mr. Brooks and Mr. Jones on the statement that I think there's some room for interpretation here, and the density requirement does not fit the ability for us to expand housing to such a large development. Boy, I can add a lot of words in there, can't I? I agree with Mr. Brooks and Mr. Jones.
Mr. Fredette? No. Don't want to beat a dead horse.
No. Especially not at 3 minutes to 10.
Mr. Brooks?
I'd also like to note that, if we talk about the character of this area, I don't think that there's a real character to it. It's varied. We have large, big box stores. We have small houses. We have retail strip malls that might only have 2 or 3 units or more units. It's just very much a mix. I don't think that we have a real character in this area. And on a quick side note, 85 Elm. If this had been built at 85 Elm, I would have said yes to it with a little bit of some architectural details changed. But just looking at the structure of it, you've got some peaks to the roof, you give it some character, you break it up, making it look like separate buildings that are built against each other. This is the sort of stuff we need downtown. And I hope we have a developer here that would consider doing stuff like that downtown and move in, because I got a funny feeling they would do it well. They're doing this, what I'm seeing visually, already doing it well.
Mr. Fredette?
Ms. Crosley, do you know if this qualifies for 79E or any other tax incentives?
I want to say no, but I can double check just to confirm. I believe this is outside of the 79, the chapter 31, is how we call it.
Oh, sorry. Shame on me.
Yes,
Stop using
shame.
code.
Gotta know it right. Where do I want to? This is outside. Yes. Unless anything changes with that, that is outside of the economic revitalization zone and the Chapter 31 revitalization zone. So currently, as our maps sit, that is, this property does not lie in those.
Further comments?
Thank you.
That, Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Jones?
Give it a shot. After review of the application, the file, and all the information presented to the board, I feel that all 5 criteria have been satisfied because the lot is well suited for a residential use of this size, and I move that the request for Argos Development Company LLC for variance from Table 5A1, Notes 3 and 5 to allow 171 residential units on a lot without the required lot size on a property located at 404 High Street, 37 Lot 07 be granted with the following conditions: a maximum of 171 units or 242 bedrooms to be allowed, lighting intensity not to exceed limits depicted on sheet L1, and landscape screening to rear of property to not be,
Talk a little slower. Go ahead.
okay, to not be reduced to less than depicted on sheet L2 of plans dated June 22nd, 26. Did you get all that, Anna?
Bedrooms?
How many bedrooms? 242. That is listed on their compliance sheet on page 8 of the plans.
Like I have that in front of me.
Oh, I'm telling you where I found it.
You know.
It's
So-
a great sheet. Excellent sheet.
Summarize
set.
again for me. So it was maximum units 171, 242 bedrooms.
Lighting intensity not to exceed limits depicted on sheet L1.
Yep.
And landscape screening to rear of property to not be reduced to less than what is depicted on sheet L2 of plans dated June 22nd, 2026.
Got that, Anna? Okay. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Brooks. Ms. Crosley, any issue with those conditions?
I just want to know, the date, yes, is the February, but it's revised as of 6/22/2026. Did you say February or June?
Oh, no, June 22nd, 2026. Yeah, I didn't specify revision date, but yes.
Yeah, just because that is the most revised plan set that you're receiving.
So is the revision of the drawing done by the date? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean,
Yeah, drawings
we
last
wanna-
revised
we wanna
June
refer this.
22nd, 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. June 22nd. Good day. Okay, comments on the motion. It was a good day. All right, I will not be supporting because I don't believe I don't think the plan's bad. I don't have an issue with the plan. I don't think it's within the authority of the board. I think it's beyond
enough.
what we can do. All those in favor of the motion, which is to approve the variance, which are maximum 171 units, 242 bedrooms, lighting and landscaping as discussed. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Variance is granted. All righty. Item C, any other new business coming for the board? Ms. Crosley?
No.
You sure?
Do you guys want any?
No.
No.
Wait.
No, I don't have any.
It's your opening.
No, I don't have any.
Any new business from the board?
Don't we have a rule, no new business after 10 o'clock?
We do.
We do have that
There we
rule.
go.
All right, all those in favor of it, motion, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Fredette, second by Mr. Brooks. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. We are adjourned 5-0.
Thank you all.